Imagine this. The alarm goes off. You hit snooze once or twice, and eventually you force yourself out of bed. You stumble into the kitchen, maybe grab your coffee, but even as you sip it, your brain feels like it's stuck in mud. The world is moving, emails are piling up, but inside your head everything is foggy, sluggish, heavy. You know you should be awake by now, but you're not. And the worst part? You've probably accepted this as normal. You've told yourself, I'm just not a morning person. But what if I told you that it's not about being a morning person at all? What if the fog in your head isn't a permanent curse but simply the result of how your brain wakes up? And that there's one simple question you can ask that flips the switch from groggy to sharp in seconds. One line, one thought, that primes your entire nervous system to move from survival autopilot into active focus. And once you know it, you can start every single morning with clarity, no matter how much sleep you had or how much coffee you drank. Let's dig into this. Why do we even wake up foggy? It's not laziness, it's biology. When you sleep, your brain builds up adenosine and clears it. Your body cycles through stages, and when you wake up, you're coming out of what scientists call sleep inertia. It's like your brain still has one foot in the dream world. That's why even caffeine sometimes feels like it bounces off the fog instead of cutting through it. But here's the catch. Your brain is not just a passive organ waiting to be woken up. It's an active prediction machine. And the fastest way to snap it into gear is to feed it a question that forces it to generate focus instantly. Because when the brain hears a question, it can't help but look for an answer. It's like opening a search bar. You type and suddenly the whole system comes online, scanning, sorting, bringing up relevant files. That's the psychological lever we're about to pull. So here's the framework I want you to remember. Think of it as the morning focus switch. 3 steps: interrupt the autopilot, activate the question, anchor the answer. That's it. 3 moves, 1 minute, and you'll feel like someone turned the lights on inside your head. Let's break it down. Step 1. Interrupt the autopilot. The first 10 minutes after waking up are the most dangerous for your focus. Why? Because whatever you do first becomes the baseline for the rest of your day. Most people grab their phone, they scroll, they passively consume information. What happens then? Your brain stays passive. You train it to react instead of direct. You train it to drown instead of choose. That's why the fog lingers. So the first step is simply to pause. Before the phone, before the email, before autopilot kicks in, create one breath of space. Even 5 seconds of awareness can change the script. You've interrupted the loop. That's the opening we need. Step 2. Activate the question. This is the switch. Instead of letting the brain drift, you drop one line into it. One line that forces clarity. And the best version of that line, backed by psychology and performance research, is this. What is the one thing I want my mind to be sharp for today? It's deceptively simple. But notice what happens the moment you ask it. Your brain, which was drifting in fog, suddenly leans forward. It starts to search. Maybe the answer is that meeting at 11, or finishing the report, or having a calm conversation with your partner. It doesn't matter what the answer is. What matters is that your brain has shifted from vague to specific, from fog to target. You've just given it a spotlight, and the human brain loves spotlights. Focus is simply spotlighting one thing while dimming the rest. This single question triggers that process naturally. But we're not done yet. Step 3. Anchor the answer. Because it's not enough to just think it, you have to hold it. Otherwise, 2 minutes later, you'll be back in the fog. Anchoring means taking the answer your brain gave you and reinforcing it with a tiny action. If your brain said, I need my mind sharp for the 11 a.m. meeting, you could anchor it by writing that phrase on a sticky note and placing it by your desk. If it said, I need clarity for finishing the report, you could open the document immediately, even if just to see the first page. The key is to give your brain evidence that the question mattered. This closes the loop and locks in the clarity. And once the loop is closed, the fog doesn't stand a chance. Now let's go deeper. Why does a question work better than coffee, better than motivational quotes, better than trying to push yourself awake? It's because of how questions hijack attention. In cognitive science, there's something called the question-answer reflex. When your brain hears a question, it treats it as incomplete information, like an open loop. And the brain hates open loops. It can't just let them hang, it rushes to fill them. That's why cliffhangers work in TV shows. That's why riddles stick in your head. That's why when someone asks, do you know what time it is? You can't help but answer. By asking yourself, what is the one thing I want my mind sharp for today? You're planting a cliffhanger inside your own brain. And your brain responds by lighting up its executive networks, pulling energy into clarity. That's the science-backed magic of one good question. And here's the beautiful part. You don't need to be disciplined. You don't need to be motivated. You don't even need to feel awake. You just need to ask. The act of asking is enough to flip the switch. You might wonder, what if I don't know the answer? What if I wake up and I'm too foggy to even think? That's fine, because the brain will still start searching in the background. Even if the first thought is, I don't know, the search bar has been opened. And as you move, shower, drink your coffee, the brain will keep scanning until it finds something. And once it does, the fog lifts because the spotlight clicks on. The act of asking is the trigger. The answer doesn't even need to be perfect. Let me give you a picture. Imagine 2 mornings. In one, you wake up, grab your phone, scroll through messages. By the time you realize it, 20 minutes are gone and your brain is still sluggish. You're already reacting to the world. In the second morning, you wake up, pause, and ask, what's the one thing I want my mind sharp for today? Instantly, your brain replies, that presentation. You scribble presentation on a sticky note. Then you check your phone. But now, everything you see is filtered through the spotlight of that word. You're not just scrolling aimlessly, you're aware of what matters. By the time you sip your coffee, you're awake, not just physically but mentally. Which version of the day do you want? The difference is 5 seconds. This is why I call it the morning focus switch. Because it's not about pushing through grogginess, it's about flipping the brain's circuitry. And once you practice it a few times, it becomes automatic. You wake up, you pause, you ask, you anchor. That's the rhythm. And every day starts sharper. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Over time, this habit does more than clear fog. It rewires your mornings. Instead of associating mornings with heaviness and resistance, your brain starts associating them with clarity and direction. You'll find yourself waking up with less fog because the brain expects the question. It knows that the switch is coming. That's how small habits create long-term change. They become anticipatory. Your brain preloads clarity because it knows what's next. And suddenly, mornings stop being a battle and start being a launch pad. Now, I want you to notice something. We didn't need a new supplement. We didn't need a complex routine. We didn't need an extra hour. Just one question, at the right time, in the right way. That's the essence of behavioral science applied to real life, finding the smallest lever that moves the biggest weight. And the morning focus switch is one of those levers. You'll be amazed at how much sharper, calmer, and more intentional your mornings feel once you use it. And it all starts with asking, what is the one thing I want my mind to be sharp for today? There's another layer to this that makes it even more powerful. That single morning question doesn't just clear the fog, it actually rewires your priorities. Most of us wake up and immediately step into a flood of other people's demands, messages, notifications, tasks. Our brain gets hijacked before we've even had a chance to set our own compass. That's why so many days feel scattered, because they start scattered. But when you pause and ask, what is the one thing I want my mind sharp for today? You reclaim that compass. You send a signal to your nervous system. Today begins with intention, not reaction. And that signal cascades. It changes how you interpret everything that happens afterward. If your answer is, I want my mind sharp for being patient with my kids, then suddenly the traffic jam doesn't just feel like wasted time, it feels like practice for patience. If your answer is, I want my mind sharp for solving the report issue, then even small distractions feel less tempting because you already know where your spotlight belongs. The question doesn't just wake you up, it reshapes the meaning of your day. And here's the hidden benefit. This practice protects your mental energy. Think of your brain's energy like a battery. Every little decision, every distraction, every piece of noise drains it. That's why by the afternoon you feel like you've got nothing left. But when you spotlight one thing in the morning, you prevent the battery from leaking into 1,000 directions. You preserve energy for what actually matters. It's not about doing more, it's about doing less, but with clarity. That's the paradox. One tiny question gives you back hours of focus because it stops the silent drain of scattered attention. You might be wondering, why is it a question and not an affirmation or a goal? Because questions open doors. Affirmations often bounce off if you don't believe them yet. Goals feel heavy, like another task to achieve. But a question is lighter. It's an invitation. It doesn't demand, it explores. That's why your brain responds to it without resistance. It's like asking your own mind for advice, and your mind loves answering itself. It feels natural. And that naturalness is what makes it stick. If something feels forced, you'll drop it in a week. But if it feels like a simple, curious habit, like brushing your teeth, you'll keep it. And consistency is what transforms mornings from foggy battles into clear launches. Let me share a mental model that will help you remember this forever. Picture your brain in the morning like a camera lens. When you first wake up, the lens is blurry, out of focus. You can see shapes, but nothing sharp. The question, what is the one thing I want my mind sharp for today, is like turning the focus ring. Instantly, the blur snaps into clarity. The picture hasn't changed, the light hasn't changed, but your focus has. And that's all you needed. That's why I call it the morning focus switch. It's the twist of the lens that makes the whole image usable. Without it, you could still stumble through the day, but everything would stay a little foggy. With it, everything aligns. That's the difference 5 seconds can make. Now let's talk about making this unshakable. Because one question is powerful, but only if you actually remember to ask it. Here's how you build it into your mornings so it becomes second nature. First, create a trigger. Triggers are cues that tell your brain, now it's time for the habit. The best trigger is something you already do every morning without fail. For example, right when you turn off your alarm, or when your feet hit the floor, or when you take the first sip of water. Attach the question to that moment. Second, make it tangible. Write the question on a card and keep it by your bed. Put it as your phone wallpaper, even tape it to your coffee mug. At first it will feel silly, but soon it becomes automatic. Third, reward yourself. Notice the feeling of clarity that comes right after asking. That spark of sharpness is the reward. By paying attention to it, you reinforce the habit. And the more you reinforce it, the less effort it takes. Eventually, your brain will crave the question in the morning because it associates it with that clear, focused feeling. That's when you know it has stuck. And here's the final insight I want you to walk away with. We often think transformation requires big changes, new diets, new systems, new tools. But in reality, the brain is built to respond to micro shifts, small levers, big results. That's the secret of behavioral science. You don't need to conquer your whole life in one step. You just need to flip the right switch at the right time. And this morning question is exactly that kind of switch. It costs nothing, takes seconds, and yet it can reshape your entire relationship with mornings, with focus, with productivity. Every time you use it, you're not just clearing fog, you're training your brain to choose clarity over and over again. And those choices add up. After weeks, you'll notice your mornings feel lighter. After months, you'll realize you've built an identity. Not as a groggy struggler, but as someone who starts the day sharp and intentional. That's the true power here. It's not just about today's fog. It's about who you become when you beat it consistently. So tomorrow morning, when the alarm goes off and the fog is heavy, pause for a moment. Don't grab the phone. Don't let autopilot take over. Just ask yourself, what is the one thing I want my mind sharp for today? Let the answer rise. Anchor it with a tiny action. And feel the shift, the spark, the clarity. That's all it takes. Because mornings don't have to be battles you dread. They can be switches you flip. And the first flip starts with a question. So try it tomorrow. Try it once. You'll feel the difference. And once you feel it, you'll never go back to fog.